House will come back to order. The House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, you want to ring the bell? Where's work at? All right, the House is back to order. Chair recognizes Chairman Werkheiser for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we disagree with the House Bill 264.
Chairman Werkheiser has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute, the House Bill 264. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 264 by Representative Werkheiser, the 157th, England in the 116th, House in the 170th, and others being titled an act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 5 of Title 21, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to public officials' conduct and lobbyist disclosures.
Chair recognizes Chairman Werkheiser to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 264.
Thank you. It might be easier to explain what they left in instead of what they took out. Basically, they left in the definitions. Other than that, that's what the bill has.
I'm tempted to ask for unanimous consent that we disagree. On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 264, is there any objection? Is there any objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 264. Where is he? Oh. Chair recognizes Representative Gravely for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I move that the House disagree to the Senate substitute on House Bill 324.
Representative Gravely has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 324. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 324 by Representative Bradley, the 67th Newton, the 123rd Paul, the 32nd, and others being titled an act to amend Chapter 12 of Title 16, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to offenses against the public, health, and morals, so as to provide for the production, manufacturing, and dispensing of low THC oil in this state.
Chair recognizes Representative Gravely to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 324.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I believe we are extremely close. The Senate added some very good language to include our university systems, the two land-grant universities in our state, the University of Georgia and Fort Valley State University, to be able to access and apply for a license to grow. That would give us the opportunity to do some research. Also, we took the licenses from 10. We knew that they were going to decrease those licenses. We've just got a couple of legal things we need to work out, and I would ask that this House would disagree, but I think we're at a path. I think we have narrowed the bill drastically. It's my understanding that the Sheriff's Association is trying to move to a neutral on this piece of legislation, so I would ask this House again to disagree so that we can just figure out some minute details and get this bill where it needs to be. I yield the well.
On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 324, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 324. Okay. Chair recognizes Chairman Corbett for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 213 as amended by the House.
Chairman Corbett has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 213 as amended by the House. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 213 by Representative Corbett of the 174th, McCall, the 33rd, Pruitt of the 149th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Title II of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to agriculture so as to enact the Georgia Hemp Farming Act.
Chair recognizes Chairman Corbett to explain the Senate substitute and the House amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we got to the Senate, we done some changes over in Senate Ag Committee, and it was all agreeable to the House. And what we've done, we've strengthened the criminal background check to include misdemeanors that included the sale or trafficking in a controlled substance. We lowered the fee for the processor from $100,000 to $25,000 for the first year, and then $10,000 a year after that. We changed the grower's license from a flat $1,000 fee to a per acre fee of $50. And due to the Commerce Clause, we had to add language to allow hemp to be imported in from other states into a process facility in Georgia, but it has to be from a state that has an approved plan with the USDA. We went from a limit of 12 processors to unlimited on the number of processors that could apply for a license. And we also clarified that college and universities with the University System of Georgia could, upon the signature of the governor, go ahead and get research started this year. The amendment that you had on your desk, after meeting with the GBI Wednesday afternoon, they just added some language that they would like in the bill. If you have the amendment on line 60, we added the term legal. Same thing on line 68, legally. And then on line 84, provide or sell. And then lines 93 to 95, we added some language to where you couldn't offer for sale at retail the unprocessed flower or leaves of the hemp plant. And then on lines 247 through 248, we cleared up some language on providing the GPS coordinates of where it's grown, either in greenhouses, fields, cultivated, processed. Line 249, 264, and 265, we inserted the or permit after the license. And then on lines 270, after that, we inserted language that laws enacting criminal offenses, including laws provided for in Title 16 not in conflict with this chapter shall continue to be enforceable and of full force and effect. So that's what the changes in the bill was, and that's what the amendment does, Mr. Speaker. If there are no questions, I would ask for everyone's favorable consideration.
Is there any objection? Oh, you have no questions. Is there any objection to the adoption of the House Amendment AM 440121? Any objection? Chair hears none, and the House Amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 213 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 151, the nays are 5, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute, House Bill 213, as amended by the House. Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 514 as amended by this House.
Chairman Tanner has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 514 as amended by the House. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 514 by Representative Tanner the 9th, Ralston the 7th, Jones the 47th, and others being titled an act to amend codes Chapter 1 and Title 37 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to governing and regulation of mental health so as to create the Georgia Mental Health Reform and Innovation Commission.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner to explain the House amendment and the Senate substitute.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Speaker. In the Senate committee, there were some changes made around who was on the committee. They were fairly minor, but one of the things that was done is the community service boards in the House version had 2 appointees, both voting members. In the version that came out of the House, there was 1 member who was appointed by the governor, but they would be a non-voting member. So what we're doing is going back and putting in a representative from Community Service Board that would be appointed by the Lieutenant Governor that would be a voting member, and also going back in under the Speaker's appointments and adding in, and again this came up in further conversations, a judge who presides over the accountability court in Georgia. So that would be someone that could be a mental health court judge, and that would be appointed by the Speaker. We're also adding in under the ex officio members. It came to our attention through the various conversations that we had left out the commissioner of the Department of Community Supervision, and that commissioner and his office had asked to be included. So that's the amendment, Mr. Speaker, and this is for the Mental Health or Behavioral Health Commission, House Bill 514.
You have no questions? Is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? It is AM 331904. Chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 514 as amended by this House, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 150, the nays are 7, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 514 as amended by the House. Chair recognizes Chairman Efstration for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House insist on its position as to Senate Bill 200 and that a committee of conference be appointed.
Chairman Efstration has moved that the House adhere on its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to Senate Bill 210, and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 110 by Senator Stone of the 23rd, Gooch the 51st, Dugan of the 30th, Kennedy the 18th, Miller the 49th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to courts so as to establish a statewide business court.
Is there objection to the gentleman's motion that the House adhere to its position in disagreeing to the Senate substitute to Senate Bill 110 and that a conference committee be appointed? Is there objection? The chair hears none. The House has insisted. The chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Efstration of the 104th, Representative Fleming of the 121st, and Representative Oliver of the 82nd. Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 72.
Chairman Rhodes has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 72. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 72 by Senator Harper the 7th, Mullins the 53rd, Gooch the 51st, Jones the 25th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 27, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions relative to game and fish.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes to explain his motion.
Mr. Speaker, we just need to stay with what we had on the House side and get to a conference committee.
Mr. Chairman, that may be the best explanation the chair has ever heard. Leader Trammell, you have something to add? Chair recognizes the minority leader of the House.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
Take your
Speaker.
inquiry.
Is that what was on that sticky note?
You got to keep it simple sometimes. Chairman Rhodes has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 72. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted on its position on Senate Bill 72. Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 493.
Chairman Tanner has moved that the House agree to the Senate substitute on House Bill 493. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 493 by Representative Tanner of the 9th, Harold, the 106th, Stevens, the 164th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 8 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to standards and requirements for construction.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When this bill left the House, it had the language had been worked on for a couple of years around inspections and engineering, and also we added in a bill that Chairman Barr and Chairman Welch had worked on around the soil water conservation. When we got into the Senate, there was some controversy around that section in the committee meeting, and Chairman Welch and I agreed that we would ask the Senate to remove that so we could have a separate discussion on that. And the language you have in front of you that's been worked on passed the Senate by 54-0. So I would ask that you would agree to the Senate substitute and get this part of the bill finished. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute House Bill 493, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 145, the nays are 12, and this House has agreed to the Senate substitute House Bill 493. Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 346.
The lady has moved that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 346. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 346 by Representative Cooper, the 43rd Gaines, the 117th Jones, the 47th. Being titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7, Title 44 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to landlord and tenant generally.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 346.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is the bill that so many people on both sides of the aisle have worked for. And after 18 hours in judiciary on both the Senate and the House side, we've come up with this Senate substitute. This is the bill against retaliatory evictions of people that rent homes in our state. What the Senate did was add and change a few words. It did add one thing that adds that if the apartment or home has been inspected in the last year, that would have been a reason to sort of negate the law. But at the last minute, the chairman that was carrying this bill in the House put and made it a rebuttable defense, which made it an okay agreement for for me and for the people that have worked so hard on this bill. So I would ask the House to agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 346 and thank everybody for their help.
On the lady's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 346, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the lady's motion, the ayes are 125, the nays are 28, and the House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 346. We're going back now to the rules calendar that was issued by the Rules Committee at its last meeting this afternoon. May not be the last meeting of the day, but the last one they had. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Resolution 67.
Senate Resolution 67 by Senator Anderson, the 24th, Stone of the 23rd, Miller of the 49th, Dugan of the 30th, and others, recognizing Senator William Bill Jackson and dedicating an interchange in his honor and for other purposes. This bill having referred to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committees.
Chair recognizes Representative Glanton to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise this afternoon to present to you Senate Resolution 67. This resolution is simply an annual resolution for roads, highways, and interchanges dedications. It has 7 Senate resolutions to it, as well as 10 House resolutions. Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, if there are questions, I'm willing to answer it. If not, I'll yield the well.
You do have a question if you yield.
I'll yield, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Mabel Thomas to your left for a question.
Thank you. Does the gentleman yield?
Absolutely.
Would you just for my understanding, say the names of the new roads so I know who's getting the new road?
Would you like all the roads in Georgia or just the roads
No,
in your jurisdiction?
You said that it was 10 and 7?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you just say so I can understand? Because I know about this because we changed Gladys Knight, but it was in the midst of several other roads. So people didn't ever know that Gladys Knight's highway, SR, I think 54, ever happened. So I'm just trying to see which roads were changed and what were the names.
So you're asking me to go through all 17 of
Yes, sir.
your resolutions?
Yes, sir. It's not true that I'd like to know those. I'm going to vote for the bill, but I just want to know.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Okay, we have Senate Resolution 67, which is the Senator Bill Jackson interchange. We have Senate Resolution 49 by Senator Larry Walker III, and it is Highway 87 bypass, and it is being named after Jackie Holden, of the Jackie Holden bypass. We have Senate Resolution 99 by Senator John Wilkerson, and that is State Route 65 and being named after Dick Campbell, or the Dick Campbell Bridge. We have Senate Resolution 175 by Senator Burt Jones. It is State Route 16 and will be named after Cecil J. Ambrey Memorial Bridge. Senate Resolution 215 by Senator Ben Watson, and that is State Route 307, and it is named for Patrol Officer Anthony Christie Memorial Interchange. We have Senate Resolution 265 by Senator Tyler Harper, and it is State Route 64, and it has been named in honor of Lawrence Jane Gillis Bridge. We have House Resolution 77 by Representative Tommy Benton, and it is been named after Edward Monroe Evans Highway. We have House Resolution 258 by Representative William Bodie, and that is to dedication after the name of a former state representative, Representative Joe Hextall Bridge. We have House Resolution 370 by Representative Sheila Jones, and that is being named after Edward Ed Manafee Memorial Bridge. In addition, we have House Resolution 449 by Representative Emery Donahue, and that is 985 at Exit 14 in Hall County, named the Atlanta Falcons Training Facility Interchange. We have House Resolution 450 by Representative Randy Nix, and it is State Route 14, and it is named after Sergeant Corey E. Spates, the Purple Heart Memorial Intersection. We have House Resolution 451, named after Representative and Minority Leader Robert Trammell, and it is State Route 16, and it has been named in honor of Jimmy Lassiter Memorial Highway. We have House Resolution 479 by Representative Mike Chokas. It has been named in honor of Marcy Terry Massey Memorial Mall. And then we have House Resolution 497, named after yours truly. Not named after me, it was presented by me. Hey, that's a good thought. I'm just trying to get ahead of the game. Somebody feel me? All right. But anyway, House Resolution 497 by Representative Mike Glanton is State Route 331, Forest Park Highway exit in Clayton County as the Sparkle K. Adams Bridge. We have House Resolution 532 by Representative Pat Gardner, and this is the Hank Aaron Bridge, Lee Street over Interstate 20 in Fulton County. We have House Resolution 643 by Representative Jay Collins, and it is on Georgia 113 and Interstate 20 at exit 19 in Carroll County as the 3rd United States Army Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard intersection. And the gentlelady, that concludes the namings of dedications, bridges, and interchanges as you requested. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And Mr. Speaker, if there are no more questions, I would yield the well.
No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And y'all remember that Mike Glanton memorial thing going on, okay?
You got to be dead for it to have memorial in it.
Disregard.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of Senate Resolution 67. The ayes are 153, the nays are 1. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 31.
Senate Bill 31 by Senator Rudd of the 33rd, Kirkpatrick of the 32nd, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 35 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to general provisions regarding law enforcement officers and agencies, so as to clarify that law enforcement officers shall not be liable at law for any action or actions done while performing any duty at the scene. This bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the Dean of the House, Chairman Smyrie, to present the bill.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is a bill that come to us that has been endorsed by the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police and the Humane Society. And what it simply does is just provide statutorily for law enforcement officers to have liability when they perform the duties at the scene of an emergency, to add a definition of emergency and also the term pet and individual. So this is something that that they agreed that we would do, and this is something that would allow the law enforcement officers in Georgia to have a higher level of immunity in terms of liability when they report to a scene of an emergency situation. That's all it does. Any questions, Mr. Speaker? I'd be happy to entertain it.
You have no questions.
I yield the will. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 31. The ayes are 134, the nays are 23. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Powell arise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
Move that H.R. 48 be recommitted to rules.
That is on the rules calendar. The chair has moved that House Resolution 48 be recommitted to the Rules Committee. Clerk will read the caption.
House Resolution 48 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd and others supporting Georgia's coastal tourism and fisheries and opposing seismic testing and oil and gas drilling activities off of Georgia's coast.
On the motion of Chairman Powell that House Resolution 48 be recommitted to the Rules Committee, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is back in the Rules Committee. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 120.
Senate Bill 120 by Senator Albers of the 56th, Huffstetler of the 52nd, Cowser of the 46th, Dugan of the 30th, Gooch of the 51st, and others. Entitled an Act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 28 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to fiscal bills generally so as to require an economic analysis to be conducted by the state auditor. This bill having referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chair of the Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Harrell, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is the Ways and Means Committee substitute to Senate Bill 120. We've heard some discussion this session on fiscal bills and when they're required and what is their impact and meaning. This piece of legislation goes further. In addition to having fiscal notes on a number of our measures, this would allow the Chairman of Ways and Means, Chairman of Senate Finance each year to pick three other either proposed pieces of legislation or existing pieces of legislation and statute that provide economic benefit or tax credits or tax deductions and do a larger economic analysis on those measures. That would include changes in state revenues, changes in costs associated with that legislation or those measures, changes in public benefit and how that benefit would be applied. We'll make that request by May 1st each year. That analysis will be done by the end of each year before we come into session, and any economic analysis done on a piece of legislation or statute would travel with that piece throughout the session. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions and ask your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 120.
You have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I'd be glad to.
Chair recognizes Representative Derek Jackson to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir, I do.
So I'm looking at line 12, if you have the bill in front of you. It says a good faith estimate.
Correct.
Now, I'm an economist as well, part-time economist. Can you define a good faith estimate?
It's similar to the work that you see on fiscal notes each year, where our state auditor and/or with assistance from, for example, Georgia State, University of Georgia, Carl Vinson Institute, or other entities that do an analysis, they'll take a best effort to determine the impact of a bill, whether it be a financial impact or, with this statute, going further, even to measure costs associated with implementing a measure. So if let's say you gave you a tax deduction of $100, we know the immediate financial impact is $100 for the tax deduction, but there may be costs to administer that program. So it would also look at that cost, and this goes even further and says, what's that public benefit? So if we were to give you a $100 tax deduction, what would you do that? Could there be a public benefit that you created by investing that or saving it? So it tries to give a more broad analysis, but everything has got to be a good faith estimate. We don't know for sure, if you get a $100 tax break, what you're going to do with that money. So we've got to make a good faith estimate of how it might benefit not only you, but the public as a whole.
Does the chairman yield for one more question?
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to.
So I appreciate that explanation, but when I think of a good faith estimate, especially when we're dealing with Georgians' tax dollars, and to be a good steward of Georgian tax dollars,
right,
should we or should we not have a threshold? Because the amount of dollars that we use under the Gold Dome, for example, House Bill 31, we're talking about $27 billion. And so what is a good faith estimate threshold when we start talking about dollars? Are we talking about come within $1 million or two, or $1 billion or two?
Right. Just kind of what our policy has been this year in Ways and Means is, I think we typically request fiscal notes if we think it's going to have a substantial impact on state revenues. We tend to define that as about $5 million. So $5 million out of $27.5 billion, some people may think it is substantial, some may not, but we certainly don't go to the level of having that detailed of an analysis or spend the monies necessary to generate that analysis for smaller sums.
Does the chairman yield one more question?
Certainly.
So around money, because that's our number one constitutional job up here, is the
Yes,
budget. So how can we make sure to communicate to Georgians that we are exercising good faith estimates for fiscal notes on some of the legislation that we pass through this body?
Well, I think there's two ways. Number one, this year we get an annual tax expenditure report, and we also do analysis going forward through our tax expenditure committee, where we come back and try to review the impact of that credit or deduction or expenditure. And I think this bill here tries to expand on that, to not only measure that, but what is the public benefit? What is our citizens getting for the dollars that they're invested? Because you're absolutely correct. Every time we allocate a dollar, whether it's through the budget process or through a tax credit or tax deduction, it is the citizens' money that we're investing, and we ought to do it prudently and to the best of their interest, in their best interest. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if there are no other questions, I would ask your favorable consideration on Senate Bill.
You do have one more if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I would be glad to.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
So this basically says we're trying to be good stewards of the money that we spend in Georgia or that we take in. Does it change anything as in regards to who can request a fiscal note so
No,
they
ma'am.
can get their legislation passed?
No, ma'am, it does not. This is an expansion of that. So this is a new type of reporting dealing with primarily what we're terming an economic analysis. So it doesn't impact who may request a fiscal note. But in this particular statute, the chairman of Senate Finance, the chairman of Ways and Means would have the ability to do this expanded analysis on 3 different measures each year. So it does not change who may request a fiscal note. No, ma'am.
And does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So what type of decision-making process goes into which 3 you're going to choose, or this committee will choose?
Well, I guess the chairman of those various committees may develop their own analysis. For me, as I mentioned earlier, each year we get a tax expenditure report. It's a rather thick document and details the expenditures of the state. We also have online right now a 177-page report based on our zero-based budgeting program in the state of Georgia. We also every year have these tax bills that come through. Some pass, some don't. We've got fiscal notes. It's always good to go back and check and see how accurate those analysis really were. So for me, I would tend to draw those requests from one of those three areas, the tax expenditure report, the zero-based budgeting report we get each year. And then, of course, each of you, I'm sure, receive, as I do, frequent emails from our departments of audits as they issue reports throughout the year on all the various state agencies and departments. Oftentimes there's great information in those reports and we just don't always act on it. So we're trying to take the recommendations of those that we trust to run state government a little more seriously here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Speaker,
No
I
further
ask
questions.
favorable consideration for Senate Bill 120.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 120 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 120. The ayes are 150, the nays are 9. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 585.
House Resolution 585 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd Holcomb of the 81st Hill of the 3rd and others, creating the House Study Committee on Gang and Youth Violence Prevention. This resolution having been referred to the Committee on Juvenile Justice. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted.
Chair recognizes Representative Gilliard to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the members of this House. Today I rise to present House Resolution 585. It is a resolution that complements what the state of Georgia is getting ready to focus on in areas of gangs, which is much needed. This is a resolution that asks for a House study committee dealing with the prevention part of youth gangs and violence. There are actually about 71,000 identified gangs in the state of Georgia, which is an atrocity. The focus of this study committee is focusing on 5 legislative members of this House, 6 additional members, 3 of them having a representative from the Department of DHS, from the Department of Juvenile Justice, and from a member or a representative from the Superintendent of Schools. The other 3 will be laymen and women that represent youth agencies or programs. It's a much needed study committee with hopes of looking at, are we taking the financial responsibility of taking our resources in the right ways, from preventional programs, after school programs, wraparound programs with our schools. And so I ask for your favorable consideration on this much needed study committee for House Resolution 585. Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, or if there are not, I yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I ask for your consideration and your vote on this resolution.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of House Resolution 585. The ayes are 147, the nays are 6. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 590.
House Resolution 590 by Representative Bennett, the 94th, Cooper, the 43rd, Dreyer, the 59th, and others, creating the House Study Committee on Georgia Barriers to Access to Adequate Health Care. This resolution having been referred to the Special Committee on Quality Health Care, that committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by a committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Bennett to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. Today I rise to present to you House Resolution 590. It does have bipartisan support. The name has been amended and changed to the House Study Committee on Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome, also known as PANS, and Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder associated with streptococcal infection. I rise and bring this important issue before the House because PANS strikes kids of all ages. It's an unfortunate disorder that comes after a child has strep. It is very often misdiagnosed, and because of the misdiagnosis, kids and their families suffer. This condition mimics a mental disorder, and it is so serious and so underdiagnosed that kids often can live their entire lives having to take on a mental disorder that otherwise could have been avoided. Just to give you a few of the identities that come along with this, children can be suicidal. They can develop OCD, tics, anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, eating disorders, irritability and aggression, deterioration of school performance, and other behavioral disorders. This is so important because it is so underdiagnosed, it is so misrecognized. In fact, in Georgia, right now, there are over 20,000 children who have been found to have this disorder. And so this disorder it impacts the lives of the kids as well as the lives of the families. It impacts the lives of their school. It impacts our health care system. Quite frankly, it impacts everything that these families come in contact with, often leaving families with devastating hundreds of thousands of dollars of insurance bills, all to a misdiagnosis. Found early, detected early, treated early, a lot of this can be avoided. What happens is that the strep gets into the brain and creates infection within the brain. And there's an acute onset. You can have a healthy child one day, go to bed, and wake up the next day, and that child is mimicking all of these symptoms. And so I stand and rise and ask for your support of House Resolution 590. Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I'll entertain just a few.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Dreyer to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to be brief, but I do want to thank Representative Karen Bennett for her leadership on this, Chairman Smith, Chairman Cooper for listening to this and meeting with the families. I have a lot of families in my community that are affected by this. I have children in each of my son's classes, both of their 4th and 2nd grade classes that have been affected by this. And what you see is normal children that are playing basketball that are doing well in school, or maybe not doing so well in school, but completely break down and are unable to attend school for long periods of time. As Representative Bennett mentioned, tics and other features, this can look and be every bit as severe as Tourette's syndrome and has the exact same manifestations. But what some families have been able to learn is that if they can get the right diagnosis and the right treatment at the right time, their kids go back to the way they were, and I've seen this firsthand. I've coached kids playing basketball that are just back to the way they were when their families thought that their lives were going to be permanently altered by this. In my opinion, this is a lot like where we were with autism 10 to 15 years ago, with a lack of understanding and a lack of awareness. And this study committee would just allow us to gather the information so that we could potentially provide the treatment. Last year, I sponsored a resolution to recognize the families and raise awareness for PANS and PANDAS. I got back to my seat, and a very beloved former legislator who passed away late last year from this body tapped me on the shoulder and said that his grandson had been affected by this, and that with the proper treatment, his grandson went back to the way he was, and they thought they might have lost him forever. So I would appreciate your support on this, and I yield the well, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a Rules Committee substitute. Mr. Clerk, would you read the caption to the Rules Committee substitute?
LC 460178S. Kelly the 16th offers the following substitute: HR 590, creating the House Study Committee on Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome and Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder associated with streptococcal infection and for other purposes.
Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 590 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of House Resolution 590. I'm sorry. The ayes are 148, the nays are 3. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. We are going to have a little meeting for planning that will sort of determine what else we do today and how late we're here. Getting ready to meet down on the second floor. House will be in recess till 5:30.